This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Gunmen kill more than 100 in western Benishangul Gumuz region of Ethiopia. Boris Johnson poised to announce UK and the EU have reached an agreement. And the US sends Navy ships to Somalia to support the country's army withdrawal. Hello and a very warm welcome to you wherever you're joining us. This is Africa Live here on CGTN. I'm Mahia Mutua in Nairobi. Also coming up over the next hour. In business, Kenya's CBK launches fresh review of national payment system. And in the sport, motorsports grows from strength to strength in Nigeria with car drifting competitions. Let's begin in the Horn of Africa, where Ethiopia's Human Rights Commission says unidentified gunmen have killed more than 100 people in an attack in the west of the country. It happened Wednesday in the Benishangul Gumuz region, which is home to a number of different ethnic groups. The killings came a day after Ethiopia's Prime Minister visited the region, outlining plans to curb ongoing violence in the country. Ethiopia's 6-week-old conflict in the northern Tigray region has displaced nearly 1 million people, but the latest attack is not thought to be linked to the fighting there. Meanwhile, in Britain, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is expected to hold a press conference to announce a post-Brexit trade deal with the EU. This after phone negotiations continued overnight and into Christmas Eve between the Prime Minister and the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. Britain and the EU are believed to have made progress on resolving issues, including fishing rights and levelling the playing field measures aimed at preventing unfair competition. The expected deal comes with just days left before the current trading arrangements expire on December the 31st. Well, let's get more on that story. CGTN's Tony Waterman joins us live now from Brussels. Tony, what's the latest you can tell us on the Brexit deal?
Well, we are still in a wait-and-see mode here in Brussels, but after 1,645 days since the UK decided that it was going to leave the EU, what's a couple more minutes or a couple more hours even? The EU and the UK negotiating teams, they worked through the night into the morning, poring over this document, also trying to finalize the details of it. And we're hearing that they're still haggling over some very fine details, including certain catch quotas for specific fish species. So we are really in this home stretch at this point, but it is going to take political will to get this over the finish line. And certainly Ursula von der Leyen, the Commission President, and also UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson have been on each other's speed dial over the last couple of days. They spoke a number of times throughout the evening, and they are expected to have another phone call this morning. After that, we're expecting that there is going to be an announcement on this trade deal. And this is really going to be a historic agreement, because when countries negotiate free trade agreements, they usually do it to knock down the barriers between themselves. But this is about rebuilding barriers between countries that have long been partners on the same team. What that future relationship is going to look like is still uncertain until we see that final document, which could be in just the next couple of hours here.
And Tony, what more do we know about the contents of the deal? What are you hearing at this time?
Well, this deal is said to be about 2,000 pages long. It is rather thin, but it does cover a lot of different areas, including obviously the trade, the tariff-free trade of goods, but also cooperation on security issues, on policing, on the energy market, and also on the sharing of data. Perhaps the three issues that we've heard the most about, though, have been the fishing issue, access to UK fishing waters going forward, the level playing field, and also governance, how the deal itself will be policed. On the fisheries issue, we've always known that EU fishermen were going to have to give up some of their access and some of the fish that they catch in UK waters. And reportedly, what's going to be in this final agreement is that EU fishermen are going to have to give up 25% of their quota by value, and that new rules will be phased in over a 5.5 year period. During that time, access to UK waters is going to be guaranteed, but after that expires, it's going to have to be renegotiated on a fairly regular basis. But while the EU fishermen will be catching less, the UK fishermen will be catching a lot more. They would go to about 50% of all the fish caught in UK waters, up to 2/3. And this would be a clear and easy win for Boris Johnson, because for a lot of people, it's easy to look at something like fish and say, we're going to be catching this much more fish in our own waters. This was something that Brexiteers were promising, that there would be a taking back of control of UK fishing waters and of UK sovereignty. So this would be a very clear example of that. On the level playing field, ensuring fair competition, we're expecting there to be the introduction of an arbitrator mechanism, an independent one most likely, so that if there are breaches to standards going forward, that if there's any divergences when it comes to competition, that there will be the option to re-level that playing field through tariffs. So that's overall what this deal is going to be. 2,000 pages, though, is covering quite a bit of ground. One thing that we are not going to see in this, though, is any sort of coverage for the financial services sector.
And finally, if indeed a deal is reached, will it be ready by the time the transition period expires, that is, at the end of this month?
Yeah, we are just 8 short days away from the end of 2020, also the end of the transition period. And it's going to be in place because if a deal is reached, both sides have committed to try to put it in place in time. There's not going to be enough time. MEPs here, members of parliament, have already said there's not enough time for them to ratify this agreement by the end of the year. So what we are most likely to see, and this has not yet been confirmed, but we're likely to see a sign off from the 27 member states, not only on the deal, but also to apply it provisionally, meaning that it would come into force from January 1st, despite Parliament not having ratified it, which is, of course, not the normal procedure here, but with such a small amount of time, a small window to work with, they want to get this deal in place to avoid as much as they possibly can any disruption in trading and the flow of people and goods across borders when we get to January 1st. So MEPs would then come back after the new year, and they would look over this deal and they would potentially sign off on it in the new year. And if there is any part of this deal that needs to be signed off by the 27 individual countries, by their own governments, that would take place at a later date.
All right, Tony, thank you very much for keeping us updated. Tony Waterman joining us live there from Brussels. Meanwhile, ahead of Sunday's presidential elections in the Central African Republic, the United Nations has strongly condemned the recent attacks on civilians, peacekeepers and humanitarian workers in the country. Panic has gripped the streets of the capital, Bangui. On Wednesday, businesses were closed and people holed up in their homes. Speaking to reporters, UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric says these incidents reverse hard gains achieved by the country. Dujarric has also confirmed that the UN mission in the Central African Republic has denied recent press reports that the town of Bambari is under the control of the UPC armed group.
Our colleagues at the UN peacekeeping mission there today denied press reports that were claiming that the town of Bambari had fallen and remained under the control of the UPC armed group. The UN mission says that UN peacekeepers are patrolling the streets and that the situation is under control. MINUSCA, the peacekeeping mission, launched operations yesterday to expel the UPC combatants and retook full control of the town following an attack by combatants against the Central African Gendarmerie forces.
Elsewhere, the United States Navy has deployed an aircraft carrier off the Somali coast as Washington embarks on a massive pullout of its troops stationed in Somalia. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo is in Mogadishu and reports on how the pullout could affect years of efforts to tackle terrorism in the Horn of Africa nation.
The U.S. has deployed this ship off the coast of Somalia. The USS Markin Island is part of a maritime expeditionary unit tasked with overseeing the withdrawal of American troops in Somalia. As part of the plan, 700 military personnel will be repositioned to other operation zones in East Africa, including Kenya, where Washington has a base in the coastal town of Mombasa. The removal of American forces on the ground is part of US President Donald Trump's efforts to pull back forces globally, a move that experts have termed as a very dangerous gamble.
It's a terrible decision for the Somalis, and it's a terrible decision for the Americans. Al-Shabaab will be only the beneficiaries, and they will celebrate. Equally, it will devastate the Somali security and the AMISOM.
In a statement, the US Africa Command says the pullout will not affect its anti-insurgency campaign. The US has warned the Al-Qaeda-affiliated group against threatening its interests in the region. Since 2017, after Donald Trump assumed office, the number of airstrikes targeting the Al-Shabaab in Somalia increased, degrading the group's ability to carry out large-scale attacks.
Drone has had a great impact because Al-Shabaab do not use the military capability or capacity. The vehicles has been abandoned or hidden under the trees for almost 3-4 years now. Because of the drones, they were not traveling with the military vehicles. They were not traveling with the convoys. They were only fighting on the infantries and the manpowers on the ground. And you see the devastation and the scale of attacks they have impact on the Somali security and AMISOM. So imagine if the drones and Americans are gone on the, from the ground, what impact that will have on the security.
America is among several countries training Somali forces as Mogadishu plans to take over security responsibilities. A good example of security cooperation between the two countries is the formation of DANAP, an elite special unit of the Somali army critical in counter-terrorism operations. In the past 2 years, DANAP has managed to push back Al-Shabaab from the lower Shabelle region, denying it the ability to strike army and civilian targets in southern Somalia, including the capital, Mogadishu.
I'm not sure how DANAP will manage to do so. They don't only pay the salary, they control. They build they sometimes go, on the ground operations with them. They fly with them to the helicopter gunships. Sometimes they raid Al-Shabaab within the Americans. And, fighting alongside your trainers, it helps you a lot to fulfill your combat training. And I think that was very effective for the last few years.
Somalia is heading to the polls next month, with the country set to elect members of parliament, senators, and a new president. The insurgent group has threatened to disrupt the electoral process. Last week, the country's prime minister luckily survived an attack that targeted him. That's after a suicide bomber detonated explosives outside a packed stadium in Galkayo, where the Somali premier was due to make an appearance. The attack killed scores, including several top army commanders, leading the fight against the Al-Shabaab in Puntland and Galmudug regions. Abdul Aziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Now, dealing with trash is a headache to many, if not all, cities. Nairobi, the capital of Kenya, which generates about 500 metric tons of plastic waste every day, is not an exception. Mahia Mutua was recently awarded by the United Nations as one of the 7 young champions of the Earth 2020. But how is she changing the dynamic by turning trash into cash? Let's take a look.
It's hard to imagine these colorful paving blocks as plastic waste. Mahia Mutua, the brain behind these blocks, says it's been a long journey, one full of challenges.
The reason why I started this was I was tired of just being like on the sideline, just waiting, complaining, oh, the government needs to do something about plastic waste. So we decided, let me do it myself. Before I started the Jijenge, I was employed in the oil and gas sector. I was a data analyst. And during that period of time, I realized there was something missing. So in 2016, end of 2016, I quit my job.
Initially, Nzambi and her colleagues were collecting, sorting, then selling the plastic waste to certain companies. They then realized that they were collecting more than they could sell and came up with a better solution of recycling the waste.
That's when we made the first prototype, the first brick. It was not the best, but it proved a concept. It proved the concept that you can convert plastic waste into an alternative building product. But then during that period, because we were just prototyping, we didn't generate any income, the friends left. So I was left alone.
Nzambi says her journey to success has been very tough, but giving up has never been an option. In 2018, she received a scholarship and attended a program in the United States where she furthered her prototype research and successfully made satisfactory bricks. A year later, Nzambi returned to Kenya with her invention, Jijenge pavers, which are not only more affordable compared to conventional building materials, but also have many other advantages.
The Jijenge pavers, in comparison to the concrete pavers, is first of all, this one is 3 times stronger than the normal concrete. The second one is the wear and tear. So because we use plastic as a binding agent, so therefore it doesn't break easily. Plastic, as we all know, plastic takes a very long time to decompose or to degrade. And so by that virtue, we are able to project this one might take almost between 30 to 50 years before it even just starts degrading.
Recently, the United Nations Environment Programme named 7 young people worldwide as its 2020 Young Champions of the Earth. Nzambi Mate was the regional winner for Africa.
It's a huge morale booster, first of all, because at least it shows that someone has seen the work we're doing. The first of all is follow your dreams and just do it. Just start, no matter how small it is, as long as it's something that fulfills you at the end of the day. Just start, because you never know how far it will go. And then the other one is, possibilities are endless, so you just have to create them.
Currently, Jijenge produces 1,500 paving blocks on a daily basis. The company plans to add 2 more production lines, which means more plastic waste for recycling. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Stay with us here on Africa Live. We're taking a short break, but here's what's coming up. UK bans travel from South Africa over new variant of the coronavirus. And Egypt seeks more COVID-19 vaccines as infections surge.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba, Johannesburg,
Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Britain has banned flights from South Africa as a new coronavirus strain from the southern African nation continues to jolt the European nation. According to health officials, the new COVID-19 variant is more potent than the one reported earlier.
Announcing the new ban on flights from South Africa, the UK Health Minister Matt Hancock said the country is facing a more potent strain of the coronavirus.
This new variant is highly concerning because it is yet more transmissible and it appears to have mutated further than the new variant that's been discovered in the UK. We've taken the following action. First, we are quarantining cases and close contacts of cases found here in the UK. Second, we're placing immediate restrictions on travel from South Africa. And finally, and most importantly, anyone in the UK who has been in South Africa in the past fortnight, and anyone who is a close contact of someone who's been in South Africa in the last fortnight, must quarantine immediately.
The ban is informed by samples from people who had travelled from South Africa, which had also reported a mutation of the virus.
We've detected 2 cases of another new variant of coronavirus here in the UK. Both are contacts of cases who have travelled from South Africa over the past few weeks.
British and Irish nationals arriving from South Africa will be allowed into the UK. However, they will be required to quarantine. As to whether the new vaccine will help, the minister says only time will tell. For now, the nation awaits authorities' decision on the samples submitted by Oxford AstraZeneca on the efficacy of its vaccine.
The truth is we just don't know. It depends on the speed of manufacture. I'm really thrilled that the full data has been passed to the regulator.
And with coronavirus cases having spiked by 57%, restrictions are being escalated in some parts of the nation.
So from 1 minute past midnight on Boxing Day, Sussex, Oxfordshire, Suffolk, Norfolk and Cambridgeshire, those parts of Essex not yet in Tier 4, Waverley in Surrey and Hampshire, including Portsmouth and Southampton, but with the exception of the New Forest, will all be escalated to Tier 4. Bristol, Gloucestershire, Somerset, including the North Somerset Council area, Swindon, the Isle of Wight, the New Forest, and Northamptonshire, as well as Cheshire and Warrington, will all be escalated to Tier 3. And I'm afraid that Cornwall and Herefordshire have seen sharply rising rates and need to be escalated to Tier 2.
The new strain is different from the one reported earlier in the UK, which promoted border closures from the neighbouring European countries. Although France and Belgium are some of the few countries that have since partially reopened their borders, Britain is not sitting easy. Jean Keo, CGTN.
Well, CGTN correspondent Sumitra Naidu is following the development on the travel bans from Johannesburg.
We haven't received any official announcement about, about this new variant and about the travel bans. But South Africa did say previously anyone traveling from South Africa will have to adhere to the COVID rules and regulations of the country they're traveling to. So far, 5 countries have banned travel from South Africa. That's Israel, Turkey, Germany, Saudi Arabia and Switzerland. They've all halted air travel to and from South Africa. These bans will also affect international travelers that are in South Africa and want to return to any of these countries. The Health Department has identified it as the 501V2 variant, similar to that of the UK. It was first detected in Nelson Mandela Bay in the Eastern Cape province of South Africa and has since spread to several other provinces. Now, the Health Department has appealed to South Africans and visitors to the country to social distance, wear masks and stay away from large gatherings. We're still on level 1 lockdown, but government has reverted to banning liquor sales over the weekend. Alcohol will only be sold Monday to Thursday from 8 to 6 p.m. All the country's public beaches will remain closed until the first week of January. The Health Department has also requested all public hospitals to make more beds available for COVID patients. They've also cautioned against transporting patients from one hospital to another, as we know that there's this new variant actually in the second wave is taking a huge strain on the hospitals and they are running out of capacity. The curfew has also been moved from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. All service establishments are still to close at 10 p.m.
On to North Africa now, where Egypt is working to boost its supply of coronavirus vaccines. This as the number of recorded infections rises in the country. The government recorded 911 new COVID-19 infections on Wednesday and 42 deaths. Tuli Shabalala has that story.
Egypt has signed a contract to get vaccines developed by China national pharmaceutical group Sinopharm. The country is expecting to get more deliveries of the much-needed vaccine after receiving the first batch of 50,000 doses earlier this month. Medical staff and people with chronic diseases would get priority.
There are 2 types of people who will get priority for the vaccine. The people most vulnerable, working in quarantine hospitals, and the frontliners who are facing the virus, whether they be health professionals or nurses, administrative or other types of workers in quarantine hospitals. In conjunction, we will prioritize those who will be at high risk if exposed to the virus, such as people with chronic illnesses and the elderly. And of course, the most pressing of these illnesses are people with kidney failure, cancer, diabetes, and high blood pressure.
The country has, over the past couple of weeks, seen a rise in infections. Government is ensuring that there is more hospitals to handle the cases.
We were operating 101 hospitals. We added 111, and we just added another 150 quarantine hospitals to make the total number at 363 hospitals across the 27 governorates working on managing the pandemic. This was around the same number we had in the first phase of the virus, with 35,000 beds and 4,500 ICU units and 2,500 ventilators, and we are currently adding another 250 ventilators.
On Wednesday, the cabinet extended a series of measures to curb the spread of the virus, which include banning large gatherings to celebrate the new year. In total, Egypt has nearly 127,000 infections and 7,000 deaths. Health officials say the real number is likely higher because of the relatively low rate of coronavirus testing. Thuli Shabalala, CGTN.
Well, the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is warning people across the continent to avoid unnecessary travel and gatherings during this festive season. A second wave of COVID-19 infections has hit parts of Africa, and there is even more concern of widespread infections after South Africa reported a new strain of the virus that experts believe spreads much faster. CGTN's Coletta Anjohi reports from Addis Ababa.
Traveling to celebrate with family is the norm in Africa during such a festive season. But this year, experts are warning that traveling and mass gatherings may lead to increased spread of the coronavirus.
Let's go celebrating with a theme, a common theme that are called COVID Safe Festivity End of Year Season. COVID Safe Festivity End of Year Season, which means I am here because my neighbor is there. So that it means I have to protect myself and protect my neighbor. And the way to do that is that we wear the mask, we distance, we celebrate even indoors with the appropriate social distancing, recognizing that statistics are showing us that 1 in 5 transmissions will occur in those kind of settings, and you never know.
International travel has also been affected this festive season. A new strain of the virus is now being reported in the United Kingdom. In Africa, South Africa is reporting a similar trend, which health experts in the country say may be driving a second wave of infections. Germany, Turkey, Israel, Switzerland and Saudi Arabia are some of the countries that have restricted travel to and from South Africa, which is currently reporting about 10,000 new cases daily. The Africa CDC says for now, wearing masks, washing hands and practicing physical distancing remain the most effective ways to curb infections.
As a continent, if you look at the number of new cases, daily new cases, there we are very close to where we were at the peak of the pandemic in July, August. Okay, July, August time frame, we are recording close to 17,000, 16,000 cases, and now we are close to that number, if not at that number now. So my projection is that with the holiday season coming, we will probably exceed that number by January or February or January. Absolutely no doubt about that.
But as the cases rise, Kenya and Ethiopia's national carriers are getting ready to transport vaccines when they become available. At the Bole International Airport in Addis Ababa, the cargo section is ready to handle vaccines. Ethiopian Airlines has acquired machines called cool dollies to ensure that the vaccines are transported at their right temperatures from the storage rooms to the aircrafts. At least 28 aircrafts have been set aside to transport vaccines.
They have different uplift capacity. For example, we can uplift up to 65 tons with the 777-300, Airbus up to 55 tons, 787-900 up to 50 tons. So these different uplift capacities have their own temperature control also. So they are latest, they can be adjustable into the temperature requirement of the pharmaceuticals or the vaccines.
The airline says it has already secured an order to transport vaccines from China to Brazil and Uganda in less than a month's time. COVAX, the global initiative to ensure rapid and equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines, says it has secured agreements for 2 billion doses of vaccine candidates, which are still under development. They will be sent to 92 countries, including African states. Vaccines may be on their way, but health experts are urging people to take precautions to stay safe over the holiday season. Colette Wanjohi for CGTN in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Well, it's time for the business news here on Africa Live. Here's what's coming up. Kenya CBK launches fresh review of national payment system. And the World Bank approves $1.5 billion loan to ease impact of the pandemic.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Onto the business now. The Central Bank of Kenya has launched a fresh review of the national payment system that will force market share leader Safaricom to offer rivals access to its vast network of mobile money outlets for seamless transfer of money among the telcos. The proposals are contained in draft rules that the CBK released for public input. The regulator is also pushing for cross-network mobile money transfer service that allows users to withdraw cash from an agent of their choice, irrespective of whether they belong to Safaricom or Airtel. This is the latest push to increase the penetration of mobile money services and deepen financial inclusion. Well, for the first time in 3 years, restaurant group Spur Corporation made some progress in winning over shareholders who voted at its AGM over its executive pay policy. One of the two votes in favor of its remuneration policy passed with 77.36% of the vote after both failed in 2018 and 2019. JSE listing rules require shareholders to express support or dissatisfaction with the company's pay policy through two non-binding votes on remuneration. Shareholders had raised concerns that the salaries of the CFO and CEO were weighted in favor of a guaranteed fixed salary and did not include enough performance-based pay. Nigeria has received approval from the World Bank for a loan of $1.5 billion. The loan will help the country deal with the economic damage of the coronavirus pandemic. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reports from the federal capital, Abuja.
The World Bank has been processing Nigeria's $1.5 billion loan request since August. The fund is meant to support the country's budget and cushion it from the effects of COVID-19. The global lender says Nigeria's economy is in a critical state. It projects a 4% contraction in 2020, plunging the nation into its worst recession in nearly 4 decades. Given that government revenues have dropped significantly, it's feared that the economic crisis could push an additional 5 million people into poverty. The additional borrowing further burdens the nation, which is already sagging under the weight of debts.
At the end of the day, it's a loan, it may be payback. The question is, where exactly are we going to get this money from? So which I think government should think about and think really deeply to sort out how repayment of loan will come, rather than us thinking we'll be the baby of the whole world and that we will be able to get forgiveness. Recall that we already have some commercial loans Eurobond, etc., etc. This is a multilateral loan. We have commercial loan that you will hardly get forgiveness for because you cannot tell a private individual to forgive you loan. So the burden is huge.
As of June, Nigeria's foreign debt profile stood at $31.47 billion. Between January and June, a total of $759.6 million went into servicing debts. The nation's Bureau of Statistics puts the economic growth rate at 1%, and investments have thinned from over $4 billion to around $1 billion between Q2 of 2019 and the same time of 2020. So how much impact would the additional borrowing have on the economy?
Policies are we putting in place? When we bring obnoxious policies that are counterproductive to the aims of government and also not friendly to business community, particularly investor, foreign direct investor, and those that bring capital inflow to the country, I doubt if loans collected from anywhere, we have so much impact. We have not maximized what we earn effectively. And I've told you that Nigeria has even, in my own opinion, have passed its debt limits because of impact, which is negative, and also because of the relationship between debt service and revenue, which is also very poor.
The government has also been criticized for poor budgetary allocation and implementation. Over 70% of the national budget is used for recurrent expenditure and less than 30% for capital expenditure, leaving huge infrastructure gaps. Experts have urged the government to explore more opportunities in public-private partnerships in order to reduce the cost of governance. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Meanwhile, South Africa's fuel supplies are expected to remain stretched with two of its biggest refineries out of commission. Both plants were closed following explosions. The blast at Astro Energy in Cape Town in July claimed the lives of 2 people. There were no injuries at the Engen blast early in December, but having both facilities out of commission further constrains local supply. CGTN's Julie Shire with the story.
South Africa is a net importer of crude oil. With Cape Town's Astron Energy refinery closed, an explosion at Durban's Engen in early December added further pressure to the fuel supply.
When you've got an incident like that, you need to immediately look at how can you source products outside the country. We've started to see imports landing into the country to make sure that there is supply of products. So the situation is under control, even though there might be still rationing of stocks.
Fuel stocks are expected to hold up despite the closure of the Durban refinery, but the incident has raised questions over risks faced by the communities who live in close proximity to these plants.
Something is fundamentally wrong when it comes to maintenance, because if these plants are really adhering to their own safety measures, and safety measures which are actually legislated, I don't think we'll be having this problem.
Internal and government investigations are expected to provide more clues on the cause of the blast.
There's an investigation in terms of the government by the Department of Labor. So we'll get to know what will have caused the incident from their side. And then the idea is for us to learn, so that other companies cannot find themselves in a similar situation.
We'd like to see the local authorities to hold Engen accountable if there were any non-compliance. But in the long term, we need to really find alternative means of generating energy. And we don't see the use of fossil fuels being best for the environment and for people.
These incidents highlight the risks of South Africa's dependence on fossil fuels. In light of this, community and environmental organizations are calling for the country's renewable energy program to be fast-tracked. Julie Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
On to Somalia now, where business activity is gaining momentum months after the federal government lifted restrictions designed to slow down the spread of COVID-19. Privately owned businesses were hardest hit by the pandemic. Many of them were compelled to shut down or downsize drastically. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo takes up the story from Mogadishu.
Iqra Abdi Hashi is restocking her store after receiving a shipment of clothes, shoes and bags from abroad. Hashi deals in women's wear, importing her products mainly from the Middle East and Asia. At her store in Mogadishu, business is slowly booming after months of uncertainty. Hashi is among thousands of traders whose import businesses have been hardest hit by the coronavirus pandemic.
The effects have been wide-ranging. The first 3 months was the worst in terms of trade and imports. I was even unable to return to the country after flying out on a business trip to purchase more goods for my shop.
In March, the Somali government imposed a ban on all passenger and cargo flights as part of measures to limit the spread of the virus, with the exception of humanitarian flights. For Hashi and other small, medium-sized enterprises, accessing the global market and delivery of goods was the biggest challenge.
I was unable to get cargo services, and in case we got a flight, cargo service was not offered at the old rate we were accustomed to. Basically, we had to pay more for the normal services. This was bad for business.
Amina Salat is one of Hashi's clients. She has come to check on some of the latest arrivals. The pandemic affected her graduation and that of her friends after Hashi failed to deliver their order due to lack of cargo services.
During the first early months of the pandemic, we were unable to buy designer clothes from this shop, and it was our graduation. We placed an order of a set of new clothes of the same type, but it wasn't possible to get them. COVID-19 ruined our graduation plans.
In October, the World Bank said Somalia's economy is expected to shrink by 2.5% this year, revising its initial forecast of 3.2% growth due to the impact of the coronavirus crisis. Abdurrahman Duale Bayle is Somalia's finance minister. He says the pandemic affected domestic revenue, with growth expected to rebound to 2.9% next year and 3.2% in 2022.
The pandemic hit us less than we expected. In the beginning, we all thought that the revenue will decline by 40%. We now see that it was much better than we expected. Maybe 10 to 15% decline. That's how much it has affected.
Somalia's private sector has slowly risen and has now become a key driver of the economy, employing thousands of jobs and creating conditions for future generations of entrepreneurs to flourish. Across the country, many young people, including recent university graduates, are creating startup companies with leading banks providing financial assistance. Abdulaziz Bilon, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
And still to come here on Africa Live. We tell you about South Africa's part in the timeless classic movie Black Beauty.
The year 2020. It was a year like none before, shaped by the COVID-19 pandemic. Africa, seemingly spared the worst of it, still took a huge hit with unprecedented disruptions to healthcare, the social and economic order. Climate change also took its toll on Africa. Shifts in temperature affected food productivity and availability of water and the overall security of the African people. The continent saw major political changes too. Several countries held successful elections despite the pandemic, while others made strides towards lasting peace. This was 2020, a year unique in so many ways. CGTN will highlight some of the top stories we covered as the year unfolded.
Invasion in several parts of the country.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us on Africa Live. Now, how well do you remember Anna Sewell's timeless classic Black Beauty? Well, Disney has put its own spin on the movie. Parts of the production were filmed right here on the continent in South Africa's Western Cape province. The horses used in the film were also locally bred and trained. CGTN's Julie Shire has more.
The Western Cape provides a breathtaking backdrop for the century-and-a-half-old classic Black Beauty. It's where Elbrus Ortayev runs horse training company Film Echoes. Otrayev's experience extends as far back as the Moscow Circus. He's worked on many international movies, but the Disney Plus production has been a highlight.
Black Beauty was a very special project. I mean, that comes once in a lifetime, yeah, and that will stay with us. As I said, we do lots of action stuff, but this was a little bit different, a little bit of everything what we did with the horses.
Disney's adaptation of the 1877 classic tells the story of a horse separated from her herd. She then forms a bond with a teenager at her new home. Elbrus needed to find the perfect animals to portray this emotional storyline.
We used lots of my horses, but still we were sourcing horses for Black Beauty to have same look. It was a big challenge to go all over the country to look for the horses, to find from tiny ones, because we had like from the born one to the few weeks old one, then 6 months old, and all the different stages we had to show in that movie how horse actually grown up and became beautiful Black Beauty.
Ortayev had help preparing the animals for filming, which was completed in less than 2 months.
We had Cody Harris from Australia, which was one of the greatest trainers today. And with our horse team, we did lots of continuous work with it, like to train those young horses and to become for that level of the film, because it's very specific. Behind we have our lead Black Beauty, which is Jenny. Cody Harris, he spent lots of time with this horse.
That Mustang's got a real mean streak.
Black Beauty has already been released on Disney Plus. It adds another notch to Cape Town's film industry, which employs at least 25,000 people and is already a popular choice among international filmmakers.
That's what I'll call you, Black Beauty.
Julie Shara, CGTN, Western Cape, South Africa.
And here's what's coming up in the sport. Motorsport grows from strength to strength in Nigeria with car drifting competitions.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you